Great. And it looks like I have confirmation we are now live on YouTube, and I am seeing us live on Facebook as well. So as I said, we're going to be getting started here in just a couple minutes. I'll give some technical instructions for everybody, so everybody can know what to expect and how this is going to work and how this is going to get started. We're just letting folks in. If you would like closed captioning, you can turn them on. We have them rolling right now. So you can certainly turn on the closed captioning. It's an option at the bottom, and I'll give some more instructions. If you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, the closed captioning is really only in Zoom. So in a couple of minutes, I will put the Zoom address in the chat for Zoom and Facebook. Get my head together. We'll put the Zoom address in the YouTube and Facebook chats so that you can come and join us there if you would like the captioning or if you would just like to engage. We'll be watching the chats in both of those as well, so you can certainly participate by chat on YouTube and Facebook, but it's all going to be chatting with the host in Zoom, and that's how we'll be engaging the conversation. So just hang with us for a couple more minutes. Let me put this link in those spots, and then we'll be moving. And this is where I have too many windows open and I'm swimming in my windows, but that's okay. I can handle it. Here's the link. Sometimes I do have passing music as I do this, but I'm not doing that tonight. I'm sure you can all handle it. And probably prefer not to hear my internal dialogue. And people are still arriving. So as people are arriving, just make yourself comfortable. We're starting in just a couple minutes. I'm just now posting the Zoom link in Facebook. So anybody on Facebook who'd like to join us in Zoom is certainly welcome to come over and join us here. And I'll be doing that in YouTube momentarily. And that should now be on the YouTube link as well. So welcome. It's just 7:01. I say we go ahead and get this started. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to actually take the spotlight video before I do that. And we'll introduce people in turn. I'll put the spotlight on those of us who will be speaking here at the beginning. As we continue to let folks in. Great. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll give my introduction and we'll get this moving. Good evening, everyone. I'm Clayton Cheever. I am the Assistant Director here at the Thomas Crane Public Library. It may not look like I'm at the Thomas Crane Public Library because I'm not. I'm at home. I hope you all are somewhere comfortable as well. It is really my honor and pleasure to welcome you all this evening and to be sitting with such an esteemed group of people that are helping put this program together tonight. Thank you so much, everybody, for helping me, for really coming together to make this happen. I suspect for the next couple of minutes, we'll have people coming in on Zoom. So I'll just go over some technical details. We are sharing this right now. We're those of us who are seeing us on Zoom, welcome. It's great to see you. And if you are sharing your video on Zoom, we can see you and everybody else on Zoom can see it. We are using the spotlight feature so that we will not be broadcasting your images on YouTube and Facebook, but we are live streaming it on those platforms as well. So just something to be mindful of where you're sharing your video. We are keeping everybody muted in here on in Zoom, except for the panelists, the people that have been helping put this together, who will be introduced here in just a moment. But if you wish to speak when we are doing engaging in conversation and when we go into breakout groups, we will be letting people speak at that point. And if there's any issues, you can send a chat to us. If you have any questions, you can use the chat feature to talk with the host. And you can certainly raise your hand if you'd like to get attention, and we can unmute you if there's something that comes up, or you can chat as well there. You can also use the chat features in YouTube and Facebook, and we will be monitoring those as best we can. I'll be using a couple devices to try to keep on top of those here myself, but I'm not doing it obviously right now because I'm talking to you and trying to give you all my attention. So that's where we are with how this is going. this program is brought together by a whole bunch of different organizations, which is super fabulous. It's if you read the description, it's something that was born from March Forward Quincy, and Nicole Patrisse will be giving an introduction here in just a moment to talk about the origins and the inspiration and what we have as what we're seeing as a future for this being an ongoing program between the Thomas Crane Public Library and March Forward Quincy. And then she will be introducing the people who really be starring tonight and helping us guide this community conversation about social justice, Vicki and Tiffany. So if you see Vicki and Tiffany hanging out with me here, that's why they're here too. So you'll hear all about them in a second. So glad that everybody's here. I'm hearing some echoing, and I'm wondering, maybe that's just me on one of our pieces. As I was saying, everybody should be muted, and the chat is limited. The other supporting factor that I want to say is the Friends of the Thomas Crane Public Library have been very gracious in their support of this discussion series and are paying for the captioning that we're bringing to you this evening. So if you would like to have captioning and you're not seeing it right now, in the bottom of your screen along the Zoom button, this is usually where it is in most operating systems. If you're not seeing it, you can send me a chat, and I'm certainly happy to help you try to figure out where it is. But there's a closed caption icon. It looks like a white square with 2 C's in it. You can click that and ask to show subtitles. If you're here in Zoom, you can see subtitles for the entire program. When we go into the breakout groups, if you're wondering how that's going to happen, if you wish to keep the captioning, just don't go into a breakout group, and we'll be staying here. We'll go over this before we go into them as well. But you can just stay out here in the main group and don't go into a breakout room, and we'll continue the captioning. If you are joining us on YouTube and Facebook, that will be the experience for you as well. But you won't have the captions on YouTube and Facebook. If you need the captions, please come in and join us here on Zoom. The links are in the chat on both YouTube and Facebook. There's a lot happening at the library. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because I know we really want to get into the heart of the matter, and we all have limited time tonight, but I would encourage everyone to go out to our website at thomascranelibrary.org, look at our calendar and learn about some other programs that are coming up. There's a special debut happening next week of the Charles River Sinfonietta, who recently came and recorded a significant piece of music in our historic Richardson room. And we're going to be doing a debut concert performance of that next Thursday evening, a week from tonight. So a little different pace from what we have tonight, but it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a way to just celebrate some of the beauty that we have to share. So I encourage you to come back and join us for that. That will be live on our YouTube and Facebook channels. And it'll also be live on QATV at the same time. So without further ado, I am just really excited to start this program and pass the microphone to Nicole to talk about March Forward Quincy, why we're here tonight, and get us really rolling. So Nicole, the floor is yours. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Clayton. And before I get into the introductions, just as you bring up the slide with the land acknowledgement, just to start.
Absolutely, I was sharing that before, and I had that, yeah, so that's easy to bring back up. Oh, there we go. Hopefully that's clear for everyone.
So this is something that I can say that I am continuing to work on getting socialized to doing, and acknowledging the lands that we are occupying and that we are on, both in Massachusetts and here in Quincy. And so we are off that slide again. So just wanting to make that acknowledgement, and that we are on the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts people, and whose name was appropriated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we acknowledge that and express our gratitude for that this evening. And so in talking a little bit about the event that we're having tonight and how this came to be, I am part of a activist group here in Quincy called March Forward Quincy that's been in existence since 2017. And our group has a long history in these past 3.5 years, over 3 years now, feel like a very long time. Could be a short time or a long time, depending on your perspective, but we have a rich history with the library in terms of fulfilling one of our missions of educating our community on issues that we think are important and in line with our group's mission, and also that dovetails with the mission of the library in terms of welcoming all people and fostering understanding and empathy. Many members of March Forward Quincy had the opportunity to participate in the vigil and march for Black Lives and in honor of George Floyd in June. And following that event, there was some communication that happened with a few folks that really started in a Facebook Messenger group, talking about what were some of the ways that we could continue this conversation as a community, and ways to educate ourselves, because I think, myself included, as with so many people, really coming to understand just how much we don't know, or how much education we need as individuals and as a community, particularly around issues of racism, both systemic and individually. And so we talked about wanting to do something that was bigger than the scope of like a book group or just a book discussion, and also making sure that there was opportunity for conversation that really expanded the conversation and expanded the consciousness. And so that generated and led into conversations about what turned into the event for this evening. And so the group that is now Quincy for Transformative Change, which was just really getting formed following that vigil, took on tonight's event and raised their hand and said that they would be the first of what we hope are a series of these conversations to lead us in discussion. But what we hope to do in this partnership with the library on these community conversations around social justice are to invite activist groups and advocacy groups who are doing work within the Quincy community to help lead us in conversations around issues centered in social justice. And so tonight, Quincy for Transformative Change and Quincy for Justice are going to lead us in the conversation around the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. And so I will let Vicky Shao and Tiffany Adams, who are representing Quincy for Transformative Change, talk to us a little bit about why they chose this book and what they hope to lead us in terms of discussion for this evening.
I did realize I meant to record this, and I haven't hit the record button yet. So I'm sorry I missed your introduction, Nicole, but let's go ahead and hit the record button right now, just so everybody knows, so that we can have this for future posterity.
Hey, you could wait until after I'm done.
No chance, Tiffany.
Hi, guys. So I'm Tiffany, and Vicky Scout is here too. As they already said, that we're from Quincy for Justice and Quincy for Transformative Change. And before we jump into talking about why we decided this book and talking, before we get into all of that, let's actually backtrack a little bit and do something called cultivating a brave space, right? These conversations are hard. They're always hard, right? They're even hard for me. And even right now, I'm like extremely nervous to have this conversation for some reason. But what helps all of us really be able to dig into it is cultivating this thing called a brave space. Some of you guys may have heard of this notion of like safe spaces, where it's very similar to what a brave space is. However, in the activism world, the language has changed. A safe space is something that is only comfortable to non-people of color, whereas a brave space is comfortable to everyone because you're allowed to go back and do edits when you say something that may offend someone, right? And so today we're gonna cultivate a brave space. And a part of cultivating that space is literally, the first thing I do is say, hey guys, this is a brave space, right? Sometimes just acknowledging that something is works, right? So this is a brave space. So now you should already start feeling like it's a brave space. But there's other things that go into making a brave space, right? There's these things called doables and agreeables. So what I want you guys to do in the chat, and we can see the chat, but what I want you guys to do is talk about things that you need to cultivate this space. Certain things could be like, hey, one mic. When I'm talking, no one else talks. Or make space, take space. I don't want the same person talking the whole hour and a half. What are things that will make you feel more comfortable during this hour and a half for you to cultivate a brave space? It could be things like, and I want you guys to start putting them in the chat. So I'm gonna keep talking for another minute, just so you guys could start putting them in the chat, just throwing out some ideas. Because what we're doing is cultivating that brave space, but also making community agreements. If we were in person, what me and Vicky would do is we would stand at this large sheet of paper and we would write on there doables and agreeables. And then you would talk about what makes this space comfortable for you, right? And I want to acknowledge that sometimes, like, okay, it's a brave space, right? I remember that it's a brave space. Sometimes, like, what is comfortable, like, not sometimes, what we're really gonna do is we're gonna really try to make this space more comfortable for people of color. So we elevate their voices in this space, right? And so what is it that is gonna help make this space brave for you? I can't see the chat.
That's okay, Tiffany. I'll go ahead and read the chat. You don't need to worry when you're speaking about reading it. So there are people who are getting and are using the chat, and folks are wondering, we've had issues in the library where people wanted to be disruptive or intentionally disruptive. So we have limited the chat so that it's only for hosts, so that it's not distracting for folks. But I will be reading the chat, and Tiffany, like at times like this, when we want to know, I'll be voicing. And if somebody wants to actually be unmuted, you can raise your hand. You can say that in the chat, and we can put you in a queue. We can do that as well. It's just a matter of being respectful. So some of the things that people have already written are that not being interrupted is a pet peeve. Inviting people who need invitation to speak, using this chat. Then I said, use this chat for your ideas. Let's see. Love the name Brave Space. The chat space isn't open to all participants. Everybody can add. It's just you are only going to read what your conversation is with me or the other hosts in the chat. Other values for Brave Space are to value and not laugh at BIPOC, Black and Indigenous People of Color's experiences. Authentic listening. There has been a request to have the chat open for all to see. So if people feel strongly as we were organizing that, but there is a reason, as I said, and I can go into the reasoning behind that if people would like. And then there's a desire for a brave space. The last one so far is the importance of acknowledging what someone has said. I do want to put out there that I also am now watching the chat on both YouTube and Facebook. So we haven't had any comments there yet about making a brave space, but if people do, I'll certainly bring them to your attention. I don't know if there's any of that, or if I went too fast, if you'd like me to say those again. That was a bunch thrown at you.
No, Clayton, you're perfectly fine. This is like literally what we want. We want you guys to talk about what is needed to cultivate a brave space, because that's where our community agreements come from. Like, I have community agreements as well that I'll add to this, but I want to hear where you are. I want to know, like, where, like, literally where you are, where are you starting, right? And part of when you start to cultivate this brave space, it allows you to know that. And that's why cultivating a brave space is so important. And I also understand the people who are like, yeah, guys, I want to see the chat. Unfortunately, like, I would be one of the people who say we can't do that, literally just because we want to make sure this space is not a safe space, but it's a brave space. And so when you start to talk about brave spaces, that means you do certain things to make sure that you are protecting those who can be harmed by racism, who can be harmed by comments that you may not even think would be harmful, like microaggressions, right? Which I'm not going to dig into. We're not going there. But we want to be careful of that. And so to protect the people of color in the room, we're going to keep the chat the way it is. And I really hope you understand, because this is a brave space and not a safe space. A safe space would, and here's a great example, a safe space would open the chat. A brave space protects people of color in the room. So I'm going to just continue to go ahead.
There have been just a couple others, and I'm not trying to interrupt your flow, but a couple people, as you were speaking, just had a couple other ideas for brave spaces. So we can certainly put a hold on for other ideas as soon as you're ready to continue. But there's been now three. So one person shared that they think it's really important that we own our missteps, so that, in a brave space we can misspeak, but then we can say, hey, I can correct myself.
Yeah,
another
and don't be in like oh, that's one of my favorite ones. It's like it's like first draft language, but make sure you go back and edit it. Like once you know better, you got to do better, which means, and that's the difference with a safe space and a brave space. A safe space doesn't allow for you to go back and edit it or for the correction whereas a brave space allows for the correction to happen and allows you, guess what, it allows you to be brave enough to edit it, right? Isn't that cool? Okay, go ahead, Clee.
No, this is awesome. Thank you, Tiffany. The next idea that was brought up was the importance of not devaluing or dismissing the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color, and other traditionally and historically marginalized identities and people. So.
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that is that there's multiple viewpoints, right? We all come from different backgrounds. But like I said already, we elevate those who are at the bottom of the structure. We elevate them because those are the people who need to be liberated and those are the people who are being oppressed. But we're not gonna, we cultivate in a brave space. I'm not going to do that right now with y'all, but we're going to get there.
The last thing that's been contributed, and then I think we're probably ready to move forward, or maybe there's one other, is that Brave Space protects people who didn't grow up in Quincy. So I think that's great. We are a city of immigrants, as we have a mural that proudly proclaims in the library. And that means there's people who can be born all over, but that really, we would like to feel proud to call Quincy their home now. And so I'm really glad that we can do that, and that's one of the values. I really like seeing that. The last one, as often we're treated as we don't have an opinion since we're not from Quincy. I think that may have been the same person who contributed. So it is important. And this is how we place a value on everybody. So.
Yeah, and this goes back to multiple viewpoints, and that's gonna be one of our community agreements. Literally everything you guys are saying are community agreements. And there's just one thing that I will add is positionality matters. I think sometimes we don't recognize that, like, the title that we have, whether it's in the workforce, whether it's like right here, whether it's in your families, etc. You have a title, and those titles matter. So your positionality matters. And sometimes, like, because I want to make sure when you guys leave here, when you go and try to create cultivate a brave space, you understand that, like, if you're in charge. Sorry, I got distracted because of the waiting room. I'm such a child. But when you're in charge.
Yeah, like, you can totally ignore. I'll manage the waiting room for you, Tiffany. No worries. It's hard to not be distracted. I got you, but you're doing awesome.
But long story short, your positionality matters. And it's something that we don't always recognize, but I want to make sure that we recognize that in our own privileges. And I'm just going to acknowledge one more time for the white people in the room, this will be hard, right? These conversations are not easy. For people of color, I know this conversation is not easy. I know you're probably tired, right? We're living in some crazy times, right? But I just want to just acknowledge that this isn't going to be easy, but we all just created a brave space, so let's utilize it. It's on each one of us to utilize the brave space as of now, okay? Cool. So now I'm just gonna go over, if I'm looking to the sides, because my laptop over there, I had notes. But so now I'm just gonna run through the goals of today, like what we are hoping that you take out of this, right? So the first goal is we want you to have a new understanding of why we utilize Black Lives Matter. Have a new understanding of why we utilize Black Lives Matter. We want you to be able to understand how institutions have failed the Black community. We want you to be able to get involved in your community to dismantle systems that oppress people, that oppress people, including but not limited to Black people. So those are the goals that we're hoping you guys get to take away. And I'm gonna pass the baton to you, Vicky.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Vicky. I've been organizing with Tiffany for a few years now. I'm a professor at Eastern Nazarene College and got in on the early leadership of Quincy for Transformative Change and also the launching of Quincy for Justice. So we're really excited about tonight's conversations. And the reason we picked this book, finally getting to that question, was actually quite a long process. It wasn't just like, oh, we know exactly what we want to do. Lots of book discussions were being launched in the wake of, all the news around Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and lots of people dove into different documentaries, and we loved seeing all that happen. So we were wondering, where can we help in this conversation? And we ended up settling on this book, When They Call You a Terrorist, because one, it was free, right? Everyone could access it through the public library. You could listen to it. But it also brought up themes around the Black Lives Matter as an organization. Because while a lot of people were reading books about being anti-racist or talking about Stamped from the Beginning, I know was one that was happening in a book discussion here too, that learning our history and the way in which racism is built into our system, with the birth of organizations over the past few years of like March Forward Quincy and Quincy for Transformative Change, Quincy Pride, Quincy for Justice, we thought looking at the birth of an activist organization would be worthwhile for us. And it would also contextualize the need to say Black Lives Matter. So through Patrisse's story, which we know many of you may not have actually gotten to read that. We'll be asking you about that in a minute. But the story itself, I think, provides context for why we need to be able to say Black Lives Matter. And the why that sentiment is really important. So we thought that this question has come up a lot in Quincy, even like, why does Quincy need to say Black Lives Matter? That this was a conversation worth having. So that's the background. So we actually want to ask you a question now, so you can just throw this in the chat. So our question for you is, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of BLM? So of Black Lives Matter, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And Clayton, you'll have to.
I will. Yeah, I was just unmuting. I will let you know what people will chime in and say, and if they want to put it again on YouTube or Facebook. You did get a shout out, both Vicky and Tiffany, out there on the social webs, saying thank you for being here. So people are shouting and just glad to have you. There was one other comment that was said earlier, as people are putting their thoughts together about what Black Lives Matter when they hear that. Then we were talking about brave spaces, and I didn't want to let this get away. I promised I'd bring it up in the next opportunity. Somebody did bring up that it's really nice to have anonymity, the opportunity for anonymity when filing a complaint about an issue dealing with race, that institutional racism can be really hard to take on, and that sometimes it just needs to be called out. So I just wanted to put that out there. So when people think Black Lives Matter, some things people have said are my Black Life Matters, oppression, freedom and justice, advocacy and hard work. That people think of the radical Black women who have changed the world. People have said that all lives don't matter until Black Lives Matter. There's some grateful appreciation for Tiffany and others doing this work for us. And I would say it is fabulous to have people doing this work, but it's some work that we all have to do. So I am grateful for whatever level of engagement people are able to bring to this. And for those of you who have been dedicated many, many, many hours, I personally, definitely share that gratitude. People have also said that Black Lives Matter speaks to them of pain. It also speaks to people of building power for Black people. No lives matter unless Black Lives Matter. And truly, there's somebody who identifies as a white woman who truly says that she feels that way. It's to raise awareness of racial injustice and what can be done. Black Lives Matter is not political. My life is not political. It's just existence. And another person has said, Black Lives Matter sadly makes me think of the racist things our mayor said about the vigil, and specifically about animals and thugs. It pains people that we still have to say that Black Lives Matter. It is painful that is still something that has to be said. People have said that the first thing they think of is suffering, and it's something that everyone, and especially people who haven't had an experience being Black, that everyone needs to be aware of. The movement is being purposely demonized and used to reinforce racism. and there's some agreement to what's being said. And I see heads nodding as I am reading these from folks as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Clayton.
You're welcome.
So, so another follow-up question we have for you then is, actually, Clayton, can you launch the poll that we have right now?
I would be glad to. And there was one other that says, people have said that Black Lives Matter, people are glad that this conversation is happening in Quincy, but also that Black Lives Matter is a clarion call that is not being heard. So there's some concern that it still needs to be much louder. So the poll that you asked for, I just been reading just catching up. Here is the poll. So everybody should see that now on your screen. We may need to read it for the folks.
So I can read it. What resources did you use to prepare for tonight? It's multiple choice. So number 1, When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter Memoir, the book. Number 2, did you listen to the podcast? Number 3, did you read the newspaper/magazine articles? Number 4, did you listen to the TED Talks? Number 5, did you watch Who Streets? Streets. Okay, I'm sorry. But did you watch Who Streets, the documentary movie? And other.
People can certainly let me know in the chat if they would like to say, if they've marked other, and I do see some folks are marking other. So this is a great time for people to let us know.
Yeah, quite a few people are picking other as what they have done to prepare.
We'd actually love to know what others mean.
So we can let everybody, I think we're a fair number, over 3/4 of people that are on Zoom have voted. If people would like to put any comments in the Facebook or YouTube chat, they're welcome to do that there as well.
I think that would actually be the most beneficial, just so that we're able to hear from the majority of you. Because I would really, I genuinely want to know what the other means.
Yeah, what you've done to prepare. So just to give, so most of the conversation we're going to be having in breakout rooms isn't necessarily tied to this book. So we told you didn't need to read the book, and we are going to lean into that. But I did want to give you a little summary about what Patrisse talked about and maybe some of the broader themes. So not really a summary, but
should we go ahead and end this poll and show people what people have said?
Yeah, please go ahead. Do that.
Only us can see it. So there we go. So it looks like the most people read newspaper and magazine articles. There's a fair amount of other, and there have been a couple people talking about that in the chat to me. And then, people can see the other results. So folks that people have said is that some people learned at the Black Lives Matter Witness Standout that we know happened earlier this evening and has been happening every Thursday evening in Quincy. Somebody else has said that not specifically preparing for tonight, but they've been recently reading a lot of other publications, including How to Be an Anti-Racist and the book White Fragility as well. Another person says that their life and family and their own personal experiences, their own education and past books in general. But I would certainly encourage, if you have specific titles that you'd like to share, we always, we love to hear titles and share them. We've got a bunch of book lists here at the library that we're happy to share. And there's some suggested reading. There's a whole bunch of suggested reading I'm happy to share. Another is the book, The Dawning of the Apocalypse by Gerald Horne that somebody was recommending. So.
Yeah, thank you. So just to give a broad overview of the book, and I actually listened to the book through the free streaming that the library provided. And it was actually Patrisse reading it too. So hearing her speak her story, I think, was really powerful for anyone who still might want to go listen to it. But what she does is she tells about her experiences from childhood and early teen experiences in her different schools that really set up for her this understanding that Black and white children experience differences in punishment. And she learned about the extraordinary presence of police in her own community by being in white communities for other schooling settings, and that really helped her to understand the ways that our structures are set up to police certain people's bodies. And then also the resulting criminalization of Black children that happens because of that. So she then also talks a lot, tells her story about the ways that she got involved in activism and through her own schooling experience, and was invited into organizing through those experiences. And particularly how her own family's experiences with incarceration through both her own father and her brother led her to question the way that our justice system works for certain people, and is really broken, particularly for those who have mental health disorders. So the story she tells and the way that she centers her own story in the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement, I think is really powerful and helps set the frame for why they chose the name Black Lives Matter. Because she was being constantly told throughout childhood that her life doesn't matter. Black lives don't matter. And so the organization grew up in light of mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, police brutality, as a reaction to that, and that they have been creating community power in Black communities through this movement. So I think it takes this idea and reframes it, in particular, that Black Lives Matter isn't this, like, so many of us have friends, maybe family members on social media, that frame Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization or some sort of organization that's kind of faceless. And I think this book really helps to put a face to the movement and put stories into context. And then the storyline itself, when they call you a terrorist, the name of the book, happens from her own experiences of having been labeled a terrorist for her actions. But we also wanted to, before we move into breakout rooms or anything, wanted to frame it that this idea of viewing Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization is not global. They've actually won peace prizes internationally as well. So what we sometimes see as the experience isn't necessarily a global perspective on it. Since many of you didn't read the book, I think we'll skip our next question, which was about what influenced or changed your mind about Black Lives Matter, maybe from the book. Tiffany, do you think we should just jump to breakout rooms now? Is that?
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into breakout groups. I'm thinking that we'll stay in our breakout groups until 8:10, and then we'll come back from breakout groups.
So Tiffany's going to be staying in this general room here, which is going to be the broadcast room. So if you are interested in being broadcast, stay in the room. But also this is the room the closed captioning is going to be in. So if you need the closed captioning, also don't go to a breakout room, just stay in the general room.
All right, so it's going to take me a couple seconds to set them up. Let me see if I can, let's see. Great. We're going to do, so we need about, what time is it now? This is the details that are always fun. So we want about 30 minutes of breakout room. Is that what we're talking? Yep. So we'll close them automatically in 30 minutes. If people can return to the main session at any time, which is great. I'm going to automatically assign folks, but then I will go ahead and move folks. So Tiffany, you're staying in the main one.
Yeah,
so,
and let's just do 2 breakout groups.
Just 2 you want to do?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's helpful. So if we do 2,
you can put Nicole on one, right? Is that what you're thinking, Tiffany? Have your room, Nicole and us, that would give us about 10 people per room.
Yep.
There's more people than that here. If we do 2, there's 30 people with us right now here in Zoom. So if 10 people stay behind, I can't really, they don't let me say who's going to stay behind or even let people out. So basically, if you don't want to go into a breakout room, just decline the invitation is what needs to happen. And I'm just looking to see, how do I'm sorry, this is, so like our captioner will decline the invitation. I'm just trying to figure out who's going to be in which room. I'm just looking. So it's assigned everybody 2 rooms. And I just want to so we want to have Nicole in one and Tiffany in the other. That's how we're doing it.
Nicole's in one and
Vicky.
Vicky's in the other.
And Vicky in the other. Okay. So I both have you both in the same one right now. So I am moving Nicole to 1, and I'm going to open the rooms. Have a great time. I will hang out in the main room. If people have issues, please contact me, and I'll just be kind of hovering, and I can drop into rooms and check out and see how things go. So the breakout rooms will start now. So you should see an invitation to join a breakout room. And again, please feel free to stay here in the main area if you need captioning or you're just more comfortable here. And if you're joining us on YouTube and Facebook, you can hang out with us here in the main room, and this is where we'll be. So
This is so cool.
yeah. And I think, yeah, I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves. So if people want to do that, we can do that while we're in the breakout group. If you are worried about having the video broadcast, since we are taking this main room and still doing that, broadcasting it to Zoom and to YouTube and Facebook, you can choose to turn off your video if you'd like to, or you can we have the spotlight on Tiffany and myself. So I believe it'll just show the two of us in the broadcast, but there is a potential that it will capture you as well, just to let you know. So these are brave spaces, how we act bravely with each other. So. All right, so we do have folks. Kareem, I see that I didn't put you in a breakout room. Would you like to stay with us here in the main room, Kareem, or would you like to join a breakout group? I can certainly put you in one of the other rooms if you'd prefer.
What's happening in the main room?
We're also having a conversation here. So it's just we basically have 3 breakout rooms. One didn't break out and has the captioning. So this is the room with captioning and with Tiffany. We all get Tiffany when we hang out here in this room. So.
Okay, no problem.
You're good staying here? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Great. Well, Tiffany, here we are. Do we want to start with some more introductions with folks? How would you like to do our breakout room here? What do you have envisioned? I'm going to let you lead. So.
Yes, thank you. What I actually would love to know is how you guys feeling right now? We're good. Just give me a thumbs up if you're doing all right. We're good. Okay, for the people I can actually see. I just realized everybody's camera wasn't on, but I just want to make sure that we're good in the room right now because, like I said, we're just starting, but that was already a lot for me. So, and so we have a series of questions that we want to talk about, and they're going to be really broad, and I may switch some up as we continue to talk. But we're going to jump right in. So we're going to start by talking about intersectionality. That's what we're going to start with. So we're going to start by talking about intersectionality. Do you guys know what intersectionality means?
I see some heads nodding. Yeah, and I'm sure some people are familiar. I've certainly am familiar myself with intersectionality. I'm going to participate, so people aren't surprised. I'm going to be an active participant here too. So please don't let Tiffany and I just run the boards. But so intersectionality is about how I'm both. I'm white, I'm male, I'm vegan, I'm a father. These are all different parts of my personality, and we can each have different parts of our lived experience and membership in different groups that in some ways are guided. This is my understanding, at least, by those different parts of our lived experience that make it, there are things that we have in common with other people, but it's not my entire being. I don't share in common with anybody but myself. That's kind of how I envision it. Do other people see it differently?
Sounds good.
Okay, guys, so you guys are going to have to talk to me. You guys are going to have to talk. You might want to unmute because we're going to talk. And if we don't, we'll just sit here for 30 minutes and it'll be really awkward. And the people that are watching on live will just be like, what is happening? So I need you guys to talk, right? Because we really want to dig into this. It's a book discussion. And so I want to know, how do you see intersectionality playing out in your own life? So Clayton talked about how he's white. So how he's white, that's his race, and how he's a male, that's his gender. How he's a father, how do you see intersectionality playing out in your own self? Because what I'm getting us to is starting to talk about social identities, right? Which will take us where we need to go. So how do you see intersectionality playing out in your own life?
Well, I often tell people that I wear many hats. And so my many hats are based on my profession. I'm a historian, but I was a social worker, so I'll always be a social worker, and a lawyer. So I wear those different hats, but I'm also a mother, a grandmother, you know, a Black woman. So there's many pieces to me. Um, and it has a lot to do with my education, my profession, my personal life, um, my friends, my church. I don't know. There's a lot to me. So we both, you know. So intersectionality, I think it's complex, and it's individual. It's individual.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. What are you thinking, Joe? Yeah, I called on you because I know you.
Yeah, so I mostly wanted to come here to listen, but I'm happy to chime in, and especially with intersectionality, I think I do better to listen, because I feel like it's mostly, although certainly it is, as people were saying, it's a lot about different aspects of your life. It has more to do with oppression, I think, and how it affects people who have different forms of oppression. So you could be um, a gay person and Black, and that would be two intersecting aspects of oppression. You can be in a woman is one way of being oppressed, and I think in our society as well. So I just wanted to throw in that part of it. I'm a white guy, so I don't have a whole lot uh, of those aspects of oppression. So my work in organizing is mostly to listen and to try to do things that bring together. Intersectionality affects my work in that the things that I try to work on, like education justice, or housing justice, are things that people who have intersecting levels of oppression are affected by. And I try to keep those different levels in mind.
Yeah, so you guys are all right. Like, right. So,
I do want to just let folks know, and Tiffany, just give a shout out. We do have some folks that are watching us on YouTube and Facebook as well, and are wondering, they obviously can't speak out because they're not here on Zoom. There is a link if people there would like to join us in Zoom. They certainly are welcome to. But I'm also watching their chats, and if they would like to contribute to this conversation, they're certainly welcome to do so, and I'll let them know. I'm not seeing any long pieces. There is somebody who's identifying as a worker. That's something I think a lot of us have, that we can be family members and members of a workforce, and that's there's somebody else who's using a chat to say, living with mental illness and disabilities is another intersectionality or point of intersectionality for a lot of people. So
exactly. You guys are doing great. And so something I heard earlier is that, like, it's individual, right? It's like it's our own self and what intersects within ourselves. It's coming. And so part of that is, like, when we sit here and we talk about oppression, right? There's social structures. So there's social structures that are allowing people to be oppressed. And the book talks a lot about the different structures that is causing the need for intersectionality. Does that make sense? And so my question to you now is,
Tiffany, so explain to me what you mean oppression is showing the need for intersectionality. Just break that down a little bit more for me.
So, like, what I mean is that, like, the whole reason why, so Kimberly Crenshaw was the one who coined the term intersectionality. She coined the term because she was being oppressed because she was Black, but she was also being oppressed because she was a woman. And she was like, there has to be something, there has to be like a word that explains these two things, right? And then she coined this word intersectionality. And so they're like, because she was being oppressed in different, like in different avenues and different structures, because she was being oppressed for different reasons, that is how the word intersectionality even came to be. And so what I mean is that like, it's because of the system and the oppression that is happening to like Black women, Black men, etc. Right? Because of that oppression that is happening, that's how intersectionality even became like had to even be coined.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And so
I'm in another generation, so I'm like,
no, ask your questions. Like if I can answer them, I'm gonna answer them. And if I can't, I definitely know where to send you to get the answer.
No,
No,
I just, I'm in another generation, so I'm listening to the youth. Okay.
I appreciate you. And so that takes us to like when we start talking about intersectionality, we start talking about oppression and we start talking about these structures. And one thing that we see a lot in the book and we see a lot in society is that it's always easier to talk about social structures. It's always easier to talk about individual causes for something instead of talking about the structure that is oppressing people. Right? So my question to you is, why is it easier for us to talk about individual causes? Like, oh, that person is lazy, which are stereotypes and not true. But, oh, that person's lazy, or, oh, that person's doing this, or that person's on drugs, or that person has mental health. Why is it easier for us to name that, but we won't name systemic racism the same way? Because we know there's a structure that is causing these things. So why is it easier for us? I'm gonna repeat it again. Why is it easier for us to say, oh, this person's doing this because of this or this? We individualize the cause instead of looking at the structure. So why is that? Why do you guys think that is?
And I want to wait and let some other people answer and not jump in as the first person to
No,
answer.
no.
But I do want
Let's
to
hear from some of the our white brothers and sisters.
So there was one person who contributed on, I believe this is Facebook I'm looking at, just talking about a socioeconomic background transcending some of these intersectionalities as well, which is a different topic. I just wanted to catch up and let folks know that was.
Well, thank you for that. Remember, guys, just play out there, community agreements, right? Is that we're gonna make space, take space. So if you're not taking space, we want you to. And if you're talking too much, we want you to make space for someone else to talk. So I would love to hear from someone else who can tell me why is it that where it's easier for us to talk about individual causes compared to talking about the structure.
Judy, I think you're speaking, but you're muted. So you'll need to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay.
Now
unmuted. Can you hear me?
We got you now.
I would say that you can look at an individual and say, and put the stereotypes on, but to look at the whole system, then you would be putting guilt back on yourself, and maybe you can't handle that. I don't know if guilt exactly is the right word, but something along those lines.
No, exactly, Judy. Exactly.
Simplicity.
You can say guilt. Yeah. You can say guilt. I think that it does have something to do with guilt. But I think you're right. I think it's easier for you to say, oh, it's that person, this person is doing this, or this person is doing that, instead of being like, oh, it's the system that I perpetuate, I participate in. You see where I'm going? I'm gonna let someone else say something first before I just take it all the way there. It's like a basketball slam dunk.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Great, thanks. Hi, I'm Deborah. This is wonderful that you're doing this. We're sharing a screen at home. But I think that first of all, we have a society that's very much based on individualism and not the collective structures. And so we think of people as, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can do this. And we ignore the structures because that is really about taking power and reallocating it. It's very threatening to the majority, dominant majority, to think about doing that. It's a bigger thing to think about it's sort of like the way we talk about policing. One bad apple versus a system that is corrupt and exploits people, that's a lot harder. It's a lot harder for people who have that power to let go of. So it's threatening.
Yes, Deborah.
Snap, snap. Yes.
Let's go. No, literally. And so my next question, because you took us there, so let's go there. My next question is, how does always pointing to individual causes further harm for families in our communities? So how does it further harm? So how does it further harm to people who are being oppressed by the system? Like, if you're always talking about the stereotypes, you're always pointing at everything else except for the root cause, which is white supremacy culture, the root cause of it. Like, how could that be harming some of our communities and some of our families?
I would think that you're keeping people in a certain box, and you don't expand that to say that they and you together could do more, that there's potential. You're just saying, here's this narrow view, and I'm not changing it.
No, exactly. Anybody else want to add to this?
And I promise not to talk a lot, but.
No, we elevate people of color. So we want
I feel elevated.
Yes,
No.
we liberate people of color.
See, to me, it's about, as long as you blame and put the reason for the problem on that individual, on that family, on their deficits or whatever their problems are, you're not going to come up with a solution. Because you're waiting for that individual to heal himself and to take care of all of these structural problems. Like, I teach about New England slavery that started from slavery, and you're not going to be coming up with solutions to address the problem as long as you put it on the individual. And I'm not going to say anymore.
No, come on, literally. And the reality of the situation is there's a structure, guys. It's a structure that is oppressive. We don't have power in that structure. So those with power in that structure have to help us dismantle that structure, because what it's doing to our families is dismantling our families. It's sending our Black men to prison because of mass incarceration. It's putting our kids, it's suspending our kids because of school to prison pipeline. It's killing Black people in the streets because of police brutality. So we need to
She preaching now, y'all.
There you go. I have a comment or two if I'm not muted. I think I'm not muted.
No, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I'm David Janey, and thank you for doing this. But the crux of, I think, some of the question that you're asking, I think, the word cop-out comes to mind, but I think that the same kernel of mythology that has taken MLK and romanticized and diluted his true message to this individual racism focus, this caricature of this Archie Bunker demon that everyone can feel better than. I think it's elevated just so that folks can excuse themselves and say, well, that's not me, so I must be okay. And that draws attention away from what you've identified as the real systemic issues in society that have a much broader culpability. And so it kicks the can down the road. It enables us to blind ourselves from the real issues by saying, oh, look at that horrible person. I'm not that horrible person. So it must be okay, despite the fact that there's so much in one's everyday life that supports and sustains the systemic systems that oppress people across the board. So I think it's why do we look at that because it's easier than looking at systemic racism. We look at individual caricature racists that, you know, do things offensive on an individual level because it's easier and water runs downhill. I mean, we don't want to do the hard work of dismantling systemic racism.
Exactly. And it's not enough for white people not to just, like, when you talk about cop out, what I thought about was how negative the connotation is of being racist, right? And with reason, like, follow me, don't leave me yet. But what I'm trying to say is, I feel like sometimes white people fall into this space of like, I just don't want to be called racist. And I think that's where the cop out happens. Right? It's more to it than just being called racist. And then white people, when you get to a place where you're not racist, that's not helpful. Because if you're not being anti-racist, which is basically dismantling those structures that are oppressing people, then you're not helping anyone. You are just in your bubble, not racist. And it's like, but there's still a structure that's ripping kids away from their parents, right? There's still a structure that is like, there's just still so much oppression that is happening. So it's not enough. The goal is never, guys, the goal is never for you just to be not racist. The goal is for you to be anti-racist, for you to be an accomplice, for you to be a co-conspirator. That is the goal, because that's when you start dismantling those structures, and that's when you start having a plan. And then also, even when you get to that type of, like, especially if you're white, once you get there, you still need to elevate Black voices. It is not okay to start things without having a Black voice at the table. And listen to those Black people. Okay. All right, we're gonna keep going. Let's go.
Can I just say we've been kicking the can for 400 years?
Longer.
No, 400 years then. Last year, 2019. We've been kicking the can for 400 years. And it's time for somebody to pick it up.
And white people, I want to make sure that, like, when you're listening to this right now, because I know there's a lot of people of color speaking up and things, I don't want you guys to feel like anyone is like coming at you or attacking you. We really just want you to listen and understand, right? But we also need to hear from you. So engage. I'm gonna ask some more questions. Please engage, because we really want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking about, like, in your spaces. Why do people rather just point the finger at other people instead of, like, thinking about structures? Do you guys even believe there's structural racism? That's a question for real.
So Tiffany, people are echoing in chats and on some social media.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know, because it's not coming all through in what's being spoken. And I don't know identities necessarily for who's saying this, but people are definitely echoing the belief and understanding that it's easier to talk about individuals instead of structural racism, and how that's resonating. And somebody even also pointed out in a chat comment that how people both lean into and then flinch from personal responsibility. Often it's nice to assign personal responsibility because they're racist or they're lazy or whatever it is that helps me think it's not my personal failings. So we want to both assign personal responsibility to somebody else, but then blame some bigger system instead of taking personal responsibility. So I think it's what was said earlier about it being following the easiest course. How do we do the hard work to dismantle this and do the listening that needs to happen, not just take the easy way all the time.
Yes. Thanks, Clayton. This is going so well. So now so we know that there's structures, we know there's individualism, all of these things, right? Part of, like, what is coming to my head is this notion of a terrorist. When you guys hear the notion of a terrorist, can you just throw in the chat real quick what you think about?
I don't think we can't do a chat room.
So people can chat, they're just chatting to me. People can, because everybody can unmute themselves, you can certainly chat on Facebook if you would like to, or on YouTube, and I'm watching those as well. But people here can also just shout it out if you'd like to. Somebody who I know doesn't actually have audio or video, but is participating by chat, is also available to is commenting about how it's easier to blame individual racists and hard to wrap your mind about how hard it is to dismantle systemic racism. And we may need a new mantra to figure out how to do that. So,
yeah, don't worry. We're going to give you some actionable steps at the end. So what comes to your mind when you think of a terrorist?
And Tiffany, I'm going to step away. I'm sorry. I just want to let you know really quick. There's somebody in a breakout room that's asking me for some help. So I'm going to step out and join that breakout room, and I'll be back.
Okay, no problem. Can you give me rights to look at the chat?
I think it should follow you as you go.
Okay.
Well, actually, I don't even know. You know, I think I'm going to have to let the person be, because I'm worried about how the recording and everything is going to happen if I jump into the breakout room. So I'm going to have to let the person just sit. So let's just continue here. I'm sorry if you're paying attention to the breakout room. We'll catch you around, but we only have 6 minutes left. So let's stay focused in our group here and just be present. So.
Yeah. So I really want to know what you guys think about when you think about the word terrorist, and let's do this in 1 minute.
Yeah, and Zoe has, I think, a hand up there, and then James.
I'm still only speaking up because Tiffany asked us to. But one thought I had the other day, I actually live in New Hampshire, and my mom lives in Quincy, and a lot of my family. So that's how I am involved in know about this. But I was driving and a big truck drove past me with a sign saying, like a big cardboard sign taped to the front of the truck that says, Black Lives Matter are terrorists. And I thought of my parents, who in their 70s, who have started a Black Lives Matter standout in Quincy, and thought, really? These people saying love one another that's like, to equate that with a terrorist, I felt just the immediate thought I had was, what a dishonoring and a desecration of the memory of people, including so many first responders in this country who have lost their lives at the hands of actual international terrorists. And you know, to equate the two, what a shameful desecration that is of those people's lives, when one is working on behalf of love and connecting us all as brothers and sisters, and the others have just, are not. So that was just a terrorist thought that I was faced with just driving to the supermarket about this whole concept the other day.
No, I appreciate you speaking up, Zoe. Another, when I think about terrorists, one of the groups that I think about, and y'all gonna be mad, but is white supremacists.
Right, of course.
For sure.
Okay. And these are people that, we don't even want to mention. We're so quick to mention people that look more like me, but we won't even mention, oh, don't go there, Tiff. But we won't even mention white supremacists and say that they are bad. That is not okay. They are racist, right?
And our own government has said, to back that up, that white supremacist organizations are actually the #1 domestic terrorism concern in this country. That's even under the Trump administration, that's a fact,
And so the question that I really want us to talk about right now is, why do you believe that Black Lives Matter is framed as a terrorist group? And let's look at this in an intersectional lens. Let's look at this with all the information that we talked about: individual causes, structured systemic racism, intersectionality. We were leading up to this question, right? Let's look at all of that. And why do you think Black Lives Matter is being called a terrorist group?
Tiffany, James did have a hand up, so I wanted to give an opportunity.
James, I'm so sorry.
So if he wanted to contribute something at this point, and there's a couple of comments from Facebook that I can contribute when we have a moment too.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to, one thing was just on the term of racist. I think with a lot of older people, there's that connotation of a really bad, evil person. And I think that's one thing to get for all of us to get around and to understand that a lot of people take it that way. And I think that could be one hindrance for the movement for all of us. But as far as terrorists, I completely agree. Anyone who's not, I mean, the Oklahoma bombers are terrorists. The Kyle Rittenhouse is a terrorist, but anybody who's white is not a terrorist. Anytime you hear, oh, it's a, you know, it's a good American family, it's a white family. I mean, this it's so anybody who's white for whatever reason is not a terrorist. Like the militias are terrorists, the KKK, they're terrorists. So it definitely has to do with, you know, color of the skin and where people are from. And, you know, everybody, you know, we need to reconcile that.
And I think like something just
Tiffany, in case you didn't notice, we've got a 40-second countdown on our room, and people are starting to join us back. I'm sorry. Time flies. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just had a
talking though. I'm gonna keep talking because I want you guys to get this.
yeah.
But I was gonna say that I think that like you're right, James, when you say that the older generation thinks about first draft, I'll go back and edit it if needed. Clayton, if I need to edit it, help. But I do agree that, and Vicky probably will be here by the time I need to edit it too. But I do agree that the term racist, like for the older generation, is like they go to the extreme of like KKKs. But I really need like, how do I say this? I'm trying to say this like very respectful and diplomatic, but I need us to get to I need everybody to get to a place where they just realize that like that is a specific type of racism that's overt and blatant racism. And I think that like that's the misconception with the word racist and racism, because there's two different types of racism. And I think the first thing that the older generation goes to is that overt, blatant racism, when there's this thing called microaggressions that isn't overt, but it still happens and it's still racist, right? And so I just wanted to note that because not because you did anything wrong, James, like don't feel that way, but just because I want you guys to get it, right? Because like as generations change and things like that, like in the activism world, terminology changes every single day. I feel like I just learned accomplice, and then I was doing some research and found out about co-conspirators, which I'm like, yes, we need co-conspirators, right? And so we just need to keep up with this terminology. And I think that like sometimes that's hard when you're going through generations too. And also they live through a different type of generation compared to the generation we live through, but Black people are still dying, so.
Tiffany, I'm going to take a second here. We've got everybody back from the breakout groups. So I think we want to take a step and help maybe summarize. I know we did ask people in the breakout groups to take some notes to share, not to share everything that we were talked about. I'm also, before I continue, I'm going to mute everybody, and we're going to go back to the way we were operating before so that we can all be respectful and continue to preserve this brave space that we're all part of. So Tiffany, that may mute you as well, so you may need to unmute yourself. So I wanted to make sure. So I'm going to hit the mute all button first. All right, now everybody should be muted, and when you need to, Tiffany, it looks like it did not mute you, so we're in good shape.
It muted me, but I unmuted myself.
You're on it.
I will not be silenced. Just kidding. Welcome back, everybody, because you said everybody's back. Welcome back, everybody. Whoa, my breakout group was awesome. I hope yours was awesome. And I did not ask people to take notes in our breakout group, sorry, but I definitely think there's some people who have like some great things to say. So what I'm gonna do right now is switch over to Nicole, who can say who took the notes in her group. And what we're gonna do at this point is have a large debrief. So we're just gonna review what happened in our breakout groups quickly, because it's 8:13. So it's like, talk about that one thing that you took out of your group so that we can transition into giving you guys actionable steps, okay? So Nicole, I'm gonna go to you, and you can say who in your breakout group is gonna say that couple things. And then Vicky, you take it over. And then I think for my group, we'll just figure it out afterwards. Sorry, guys, I dropped the ball on that, and it was my idea.
Our group, Gulstan, we didn't physically take notes, but he was going to be the person who was going to share sort of the standout piece of information that came out of our discussion.
Great. And so Gullison, I think yep, you are unmuted, so we should be able to hear you now.
Yeah, okay. So you want me to repeat that same which I talked already, or what?
The two main points that came out of our group's discussion. So not just your comments, but the two main points that came out of everyone's comments.
Yes, there. There's first is this one is from the beginning, or starting this Zoom and social discussion event. I appreciate. I like that. We need that, and I hope it will be continuous. But same time, I want to little bit think about the previous or past administration from the is a many year decade. This country is working as good #1 country and all those things, but that's not the reality. We are thinking many times to go back. So that's not supposed to we think about here, but these are the system or the social injustice or those things. So this make us think to even go back, not living worth here, to spend our time, money, family. And so that kind of point I can want to explain and share with Zoom.
Thank you very much. I think, is it okay if I add one more piece of information? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Okay. Another thing that came out of our group in terms of ways that people either observe or have experienced that systems have contributed to being harmful is in terms of who holds political power in this city, or who is made to feel like they are worthy of being included in the political process. And that does not, in this city, always, it tends to not feel, and almost all the time for folks in our group, feels like it's for a select few, and it's not accessible to everybody. And so there's not an equal distribution of political power, or who's seen as being worthy of participating in the political process.
Thank you so much. Your group sounds like y'all had some great conversation. Vicky, take it away.
Rosanna Batista is going to be speaking for us.
And we'll need to make sure that Rosanna can speak. So I'm looking to see how we can, I need to find her so we can unmute her mic. There we go. All right, Rosanna, I think we go ahead and say something. I think we should be able to hear you now.
Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think we could have kept talking because there were so many different topics, but I think we landed at two that may be possible, because Vicky was very good at getting us to kind of like, we need actionable kinds of things, you know, because I was very interested in talking about the school system. And I think we were really good, and many of us contributed towards, you know, it shouldn't just be, you know, like, for example, from my perspective of being a parent, all the way through from the school committee to like who's elected into those, like you guys had mentioned, into those positions of power, make a difference, because they don't represent different voices, and they definitely don't represent immigrant voices. Or the other thing that we thought would be actionable would be to have many materials available in multiple languages, because it shows respect of our diversity, because Quincy is diverse. So we thought that those two things, so that we didn't land at exactly how we would do those things necessarily. Of course, one way would be to make sure to hold our leaders accountable for going and getting the funds to be able to have translatable services, interpreter services, especially for our children with IEPs. But we also discussed as a group in terms of representation, how do we do that? And it might be all of us supporting those individuals that don't look the same, because that's what it seems like in terms of the people in power.
Wow, it seems like you guys also had an amazing discussion. Would anyone from the group want to talk? If not, I can sum up what we talked about.
Joe is raising his hand, I see. So.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I'll chime in with that. So right at the end, Tiffany mentioned two types of racism. There's the more blatant white supremacist type that many people are familiar with the Klan and organizations that are explicitly racist, and then the microaggressions as another type, but there's a third type of racism that was implied by our conversation, and I thought was brought up really well by Rosanna just a minute ago, and it's institutional racism that's it's not directed at individual people. It's about how systems are set up. So when we see that kids are going to IEP meetings, and the official position of the school is that there are translators available for IEP meetings, and we find out from the people who are actually there that that's not happening, as I've heard before and others have heard. That's an example of institutional racism. They're not personally saying that, no one's saying they don't like immigrant folks, but they're acting in ways that take power away from immigrant people in public schools, which are supposed to be there for all. So I use an example from your breakout group to enhance it, other examples of what we talked about it for systematic racism.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'm just gonna add a couple of things. We talked a lot about intersectionality. We talked about like why Black Lives Matter is being called a terrorist group. We talked a lot about like how we're so quick to talk about individualism and we're always pointing a finger at someone else, and how sometimes that looks like copping out, right? And how we need to take ownership of the structure that is oppressing people. We talked a lot about a lot of things, which just led us up to what happened when you guys came on the call. So thank you guys so much for engaging. And Clayton wants to add. Go ahead, Clayton.
I just wanted, so Rosanna, who was speaking just before Joe, also did say she had one additional thing that she wanted to add. So I told her I'd give her the mic again. So I'm passing that, I believe. Yeah.
One thing that, because Tiffany created a brave space, you're wonderful. Oh my gosh, I adore you. You're so cool. So because you did that, we were able to have a conversation about how, it's not equal. The fact that we're able to see that some people make it and others don't, it's not because of that individual. It is historical. It's 400 years of a lot of oppression, Jim Crow, housing discrimination, disabilities, and so on and so forth. So perhaps if we had a conversation about, it's not about picking yourself up by your bootstrap, it's actually you're being kept down for generations. Maybe that difference, if we had some educational sort of thing that could come out of this to the general public, because we were trying to figure out, Vicky was good at this. Like, she's like, what do we do, guys? Like, what is actionable? Maybe outside of this amazing group of people who are like-minded, if we had more conversations about, no, it's not the same. This person is now starting out in the same place that you are. It's different, it's harder, it's more oppressive.
Yeah, and like, there's a name for it. It's the myth of meritocracy, right? that we all started off from the same playing field. No, we didn't. Exactly what you're saying, Rosanna. And you're amazing. What? Okay, I'm not gonna geek out, but but no, for real, guys. Like, it's literally the myth of meritocracy, and part of what Quincy for Justice does, and it's going to be doing, is doing that educational piece, having those workshops. So definitely follow Kiefer J on Facebook, Instagram, because we will have some of those things. And maybe the group who put this together, we can put together, Clayton, I'm just thinking, I'm sorry, but maybe we can put together a workshop that will really get us into some actions, because we didn't dig into that many actions. Normally I'm like, Vicky, we gotta do actions, but we didn't dig into that because we needed to go somewhere else. But I definitely agree. So we need to like, oh, I have so many ideas. We gotta talk. But we have to transition, because a part of what me and Vicky do well is we do give out tangible actions that you can do now. And we're gonna start some. Because the reality of the situation is this, and we didn't get to go into this, but I think everybody has said it. This stuff is affecting us in Quincy. It is happening in Quincy. Diversity is not just like, oh, because you have different ethnicities, but if they don't have a seat at the table, then it's part of the problem. You're not really helping you're perpetuating a structure that is oppressive, right? If you don't have these people sitting at the table. And so we didn't really get to go into that piece, but we have some ideas and some actionable steps that we're going to try to give to you in 5 minutes. So.
Okay. My list starts first, I think, here.
Yep.
So some of the first things you should do is think about where you have spheres of influence. I know that Tiffany referenced intersectionality. So all of us have power in different situations, and we might experience oppression in different situations. So think about the places where you actually have spheres of influence. That might be in a role of leadership, or it might just be through constituent pressure as well. And use that, leverage your privileges for lifting the burden for other people who are more oppressed. So that is just one tangible thing that you can definitely do. Think about your spheres of influence, and then through bold leadership, constituent pressure, create change. The second one is actually reimagining the status quo. We started doing this a little in my group then, which it's hard to think through. It's like the status quo is our everyday life. It's what we live in. We even maybe think that maybe we should just do incremental change because that's what's most achievable. When sometimes we just need to sit back and reimagine what should be, what could be. And so by doing that, that's actually really important because it helps create power within our community, and then also helps give voice to others who need to be part of these actions. So reimagining things about our systems and also where we can invest is critical.
Yeah, and the third thing you can do that's really tangible is go join an anti-racist group. Literally, you can go do that. Literally, there's all this social media happening, all these, you can Google search them, go find some. There are some in Quincy. So you can go join March Forward Quincy, Quincy Pride, Quincy for Transformative Change, Quincy for Justice. There's so many, right? Go find them. I also would recommend you can also join Black Lives Matter Boston. I always try to uplift Black voices, and we know that those are ran by Black people. So Black Lives Matter Boston is definitely a huge group that you can go and join. So go join an anti-racist group.
So for a fourth thing, for many of us, we have children in our lives right now. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and anti-racist parenting or grandparenting shouldn't be underestimated. The ability to actually create change in future generations and changing mindsets today is really critical. So there's tons of resources about how to raise anti-racist children. And through that process, you can check your own biases as well and learn about ways to confront racism in your own community while you engage in it with your own children or grandchildren as well. So that's a key place that you can create change today. Oh, I'm the next one too. Accountability, number 5, accountability, which is important. We need to hold people to account who are in positions of power. That could be our local government, like we've talked about and several people have referenced. But it can also be accountability in your churches, your religious or institutions that you're part of. It could be in your workplace. Hold people accountable for anti-racist trainings that should be happening in your workplace. Hold people accountable in your religious institutions for anti-racist training to be happening about how your community can be inclusive. And then also at the city level and among our representatives as well, we can hold people accountable for these sorts of actions. And a lot of this is about making things transparent. So it's not just making them do things, it's asking to help give us data and information to help monitor situations. So part of it is asking for information around policing accountability in Quincy, actually. Can we see the way policing happens in Quincy? And then we can definitely hold people accountable if we can see it. But right now we're at the stage of just asking for transparency, or transparency in health data or in housing justice. All of those sorts of things are layered into things that we can actually do.
The next one is take to the streets. Is one of my favorite things. Like, let's go be disruptive in a peaceful way, right? I think that sometimes people like really don't take into consideration of how much these things are actually helpful. Yeah, they're disruptive, but we still should do them. It's important for us to take to the streets, and numbers matter. I literally had someone tell me, a police officer, white man, told me, he was like, oh, well, maybe if there wasn't just 30 of you, we would have blocked off the street for you. And that doesn't matter. It should it shouldn't matter if it's 30 of us or 1,000 of us. Numbers matter. And literally taking to the streets is what democracy, that's how democracy looks, right? If you're being racist, if there's a structure that is oppressing, sometimes you have to go and protest. Sometimes you have to do a sit-in in City Hall. Sometimes you got to get a little bit more disruptive, and other times you need to do normative actions like petitions, social media campaigns, hashtags. We can use hashtags, guys. But let's go. Let's do activism because it matters.
Voting. Another one. Obviously, voting is on everyone's mind probably right now. You're probably like, guys, you need to wrap it up. There's a debate that's happening in 29 minutes, right? So, but voting isn't the end, but it is a critical piece of engagement. So just that can't be your only way of participating in anti-racism work. Definitely go vote in anti-racist ways, but make sure that you're also committed to the work that comes after we vote and after we put people in power, and then we hold them accountable as well. So voting, though, is critical.
The next one is donate to anti-racist causes. Guys, put your money where your mouth is. Let's not just say Black Lives Matter and our money don't represent that. Buy Black, right? Really put your money into anti-racist groups. And the last one that we're just going to give you guys tonight is, guys, be committed to personal growth, right? It is your own job to get educated in this stuff. It is your job to grow. It's not enough just to not be racist. You need to be anti-racist. You need to dismantle the structures, guys. And people of color, there's still stuff that we need to learn, like our history, right? It's our own job and our own responsibilities to be committed to growth. And then also, let's talk to each other. We can talk to each other afterwards, but we need to do the work. So do the work, guys, do the work. The last thing that I want to leave you guys with today is a quote from Asha Shakur. Yes, goals. And it says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love one another and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Asante Shakur, guys. I really hope that you guys got something out of today. I'm really hoping that you took something tangible out. And Thank you guys for allowing us to go 3 minutes over. It's appreciated. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for utilizing the brave space. Please take that with you. Tell people, like, I don't want no safe space. It need to be brave. For real though, because it matters and it allows conversations like this, like we had today, to actually happen. You guys are all great and we appreciate you coming out. And I'm gonna pass it to Clayton.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm not going to take any more time except for to pass the mic to Nicole, who I know wants to say a couple things, and to let everybody know there are some links that I've put in the chat on YouTube and Facebook, and here as well, for future readings for kids, because I know sometimes we take this and want to share with our families, and that was one of the things. And so librarians have at Thomas Crane have put together a list of some suggested readings. So I hope you'll take a look at those, especially if you know young people and would like to continue this conversation with them. There's also, I put a link for an action that's happening on Saturday. There's been monthly Black Lives Matter bike rides, and there's another one coming up starting at the Ink Block in Boston. So if you're looking for another way you can take it to the streets and people to do it with, I've been on a number of those rides myself, and I can't recommend them highly enough. So that's it for me. Thank you everybody for coming, and Nicole, please take us out.
So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. I just want to say two things before I close us out. In regards to voting, of course, we want to vote in presidential elections and primary elections, but voting in our local elections matters as well. And so, you know, every year is a voting year. There are initiatives on the ballot. That's how we vote for school committee. It's how we vote for our city councilors. It's how we vote for our mayor. It's how we vote for what happens in our city. So it's important to show up, and not just on the years that we have to vote for president. And I think that that's part of how we express our wishes. It's one of the most important ways that we can express our wishes. And also thinking about, if you don't like who's representing us, who among us would like to raise their hand and represent this city and start to change the way that the representation in this city looks. And, you know, we have folks within our own networks who have the experience and the ability to help us do that. And I think that's an area where everybody can participate, and we can demand access to representation. So I just wanted to make that clear. I know I didn't know how many city councilors Quincy had until 2016 or 2017. And so I think a silver lining of the current situation we're in with the current occupant is that I had to become more informed and I got more involved. And I think that I've made a lot of friends and a lot of connections who are in the same boat. And we are at another pivotal moment around the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's an area where we all have the ability to lift each other up. And we hope that this conversation tonight is just a first of many. And March Forward Quincy and the library hope to invite Quincy for Transformative Change and other groups doing activist work within Quincy to lead us in discussions like this. So we thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope that we will see you again for future conversations. And I want to thank Quincy for Transformative Change, and specifically Tiffany and Vicki for leading us tonight and taking us on this first journey into these conversations. So thank you very much. And thank you to Clayton and the library for always being a wonderful partner and so dedicated to our community.
Thank you, Nicole. Tiffany wanted to encourage everybody to go out and find her on Facebook, where she rocks. And I just want to say one final thank you to everybody for coming together tonight. It's really been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all. I've gotten lots of gratitude on the chat from folks who really appreciated this evening's program. And like we said at the top, we really want this to be the beginning of a long conversation about social justice and community building in the city. So as representing the library, one of our top goals is fostering community. And I really feel like we've made some really significant strides towards doing that and bringing people together tonight. And I just am so grateful for everybody for caring, for giving of yourself tonight and for your time. Thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.